Welcome to a deep dive, into the life of a pretty remarkable guy from early Islam,
Zayd al Khayr.
Zayd al Khayr.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're going to be, kind of looking at excerpts from a text that chronicles his journey. And this is not, your typical boring history lesson.
Right.
We're talking, camel raids and dramatic encounters and really a glimpse into this world that's kind of on the cusp of major change.
What's really, I think, fascinating about Zayd's story is this sort of view that we get of him in two very different worlds.
Yeah.
So we get pre-Islamic Arabia, right? The Jahiliyyah period.
Yeah, the Jahiliyyah period. And it's often translated as like the age of ignorance, but I think that's a little misleading.
Yeah, it is a little misleading. I think
Right.
it's really more of a time before the revelation of Islam, a society with its own very complex set of values and customs.
Yeah.
And Zayd, during this time, was actually known as a Zayd al Khayl,
Oh, interesting.
the man of forces.
Okay, which already like paints a picture. He's a force to be reckoned with.
It suggests high status, a skilled warrior,
Hmm.
maybe even a leader among his people.
So we've got this image of him as this powerful warrior,
Mm-hmm.
but then you come across this story about a drought,
Right.
that his tribe is struggling, and this man shows up at his tent desperate, for food and water,
Yeah.
who we later find out is actually his father, although neither of them know it at the time.
Right.
And Zayd, instead of turning this stranger away,
Yeah.
shows this incredible generosity.
Incredible.
He shares what little he has,
Right.
really embodying this core value of hospitality that was so central to the culture.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk about a test of character, right?
That's
But then
right.
it doesn't even stop there.
No.
Later, Zayd catches this same man trying to steal his camels.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So you'd think at this point he'd be furious.
You would think he would be furious.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead of like harsh punishment or anything like that, he challenges the man to an archery contest.
Wow.
And the text really emphasizes, Zayd's skill as an archer. He's lodging these arrows with incredible accuracy.
Okay, this is straight out of like an action movie or something.
Right.
I love it.
It really kind of speaks to the values of the time, right? You
Yeah.
see honor, courage, this sense of fair play, even in a situation where, you might expect violence.
Yeah.
It really helps set the stage for understanding Zayd's character.
So how does this ultimate desert warrior, how does he end up encountering Islam?
Whoa.
I mean, that's a pretty dramatic shift, from camel
yeah.
raids to the mosque, right?
But word of the Prophet Muhammad and his teachings had really spread far and wide by this point.
Okay.
And Zayd, intrigued, leads this delegation to Medina,
Okay.
which was the city where the Prophet had established a community.
Yeah.
And they went to hear him speak to see what this new faith was all about.
Wow. I bet that was pretty intense.
Oh, absolutely.
What was the reaction like?
Well, you see a real mix of emotions.
Okay.
Some, like Zayd, are immediately drawn to the Prophet's message. Uh-huh.
But others are more hesitant, even resistant.
Interesting.
The text mentions this man named Zur ibn Sudus, who seems to be filled with envy and fear at the Prophet's growing influence.
That's fascinating. So even in those early days, there were all these, different responses to the message.
Absolutely. It wasn't this like simple overnight kind of conversion for everybody.
Right.
There were very complex emotions at play and different motivations.
Yeah.
But for Zayd, something clicked.
Yeah. And it's right there in the mosque.
Yeah.
He declares his faith.
He does.
I mean, reading that, it really gave me chills.
What do you think was going through Zayd's mind at that moment?
Yeah.
What was it that resonated with him so powerfully? Because it's not just a change of religion, it's a total transformation.
Yeah.
And it's right then and there that the Prophet renames him.
Oh, wow.
Zayd al Khayl, Zayd the Good.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
It's like he's being given a new identity, a new start.
And it makes you wonder how much of his past, of those values from the Jahiliyyah,
Right.
did he carry with him into this new life?
Right. It's fascinating. That's something that's intrigued scholars for centuries.
Yeah.
It's like this bridge between two worlds.
Right.
The renaming itself is really significant.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Prophet recognized something in Zayd, some inherent goodness
Right.
that aligned with, principles of Islam.
Yeah, so it wasn't just about erasing his past, but building upon it. That's
Yeah.
really fascinating. And it really, I think, challenges this idea
Yeah.
that converting to Islam meant like a complete rejection of everything that came before.
Yeah, these values of generosity, courage, and justice.
Yeah.
These were already, deeply embedded in the Arab culture.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the Prophet was building upon, these existing moral frameworks,
Right.
making the message of Islam resonate with people like Zayd.
Yeah. And I can see how that would make it more relatable.
Right.
Instead of feeling like you're being told to abandon everything, it's more like you're discovering a deeper meaning in
Exactly.
the values that you've always held dear.
And there's this really interesting anecdote
Okay.
that illustrates how Zayd carried his past into his new faith.
Yeah.
The story goes that he refused to recline comfortably in the presence of the Prophet.
I can just picture, this legendary warrior,
Yeah.
known for his strength and confidence.
Right.
And he's choosing to sit humbly, before the Prophet.
Yeah.
What a powerful statement about the importance of humility in Islam.
It really highlights that even for someone as accomplished as Zayd,
Right.
humility was absolute paramount.
Yeah.
And you see this theme repeated throughout Islamic teachings.
Right.
This idea of submitting to a higher power.
It's interesting to contrast Zayd's reaction with Zur ibn Sudus,
Yes.
the man who rejected Islam.
Right.
What do you think was at the root of his resistance?
Well, the text seems to suggest that it was rooted in fear and envy,
Okay.
which kind of makes sense when you think about, the societal shifts that Islam was bringing about.
Right.
This emphasis on social justice, the rejection of these tribal hierarchies,
Yeah.
This idea of a community united by faith rather than by, blood ties.
Right.
These were radical changes.
Huge. Yeah. And I can see how that would be threatening to some people, especially those who benefited from
Well,
it,
of course.
from the old ways.
Yeah.
It's human nature. I think
Yeah.
change, even positive change, can be scary.
And it speaks to the courage of individuals like Zayd,
Yeah.
who embraced these changes wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Even when it meant challenging the status quo,
Right.
he saw in Islam not just, this new set of rules,
Right.
but a way of life that really resonated with his deepest values.
It's a good reminder that conversion, whether it's to a new faith or even, just a new way of thinking, it's a deeply personal journey, and it's shaped by our experiences, our values.
Right, yeah.
And sometimes even, our fears. But in Zayd's case,
Yeah.
it really seems like he found in Islam this framework
Yeah.
that gave even deeper meaning to the values that he already held dear.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the kind of tragic part of the story.
Yeah.
Despite, his enthusiasm and devotion.
Yeah.
Zayd's time as a Muslim was tragically cut short.
He contracts a fever, and despite his desire to fight,
Right.
for the cause of Islam,
Yeah.
he feels this pull to return to his people.
And he dies on the way,
Right, yeah.
never getting the chance to fully live out this new faith.
Right.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But it also raises this really powerful question,
Yeah.
Can the impact of a life be measured solely by its length?
Right. It's a question that really resonates, especially in Zayd's case.
Yeah.
His story almost feels like this unfinished symphony.
Yeah.
You see all this potential, all this passion, and then it's suddenly cut short.
Yeah, and yet even in that short time, he leaves this indelible mark.
Right.
His conversion, his renaming, his unwavering commitment to Islam, even in the face of illness, all of it speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what it means to live a life of purpose.
Right.
It's not about how long you live, but how you live. And Zayd, even with his limited time, he managed to embody that ideal.
Right.
He planted a seed, and who knows, how far its branches might have reached.
His story really challenges us to consider our own legacies.
Yeah.
What values are we living by? What impact do we want to have on the world? How can we make the most of the time that we have, just like Zayd did?
Those are powerful questions to ponder.
They are.
But before we get too lost in introspection, I'm curious to know more about the lasting impact of Zayd's story.
Right.
Did his conversion have any ripple effects on his tribe or the wider community?
That's where we get into the realm of historical speculation. The sources don't provide detailed accounts of the immediate aftermath, but...
Yeah, it sounds like Zayd's story is one of those historical mysteries, that leave us with more questions than answers. But maybe that's part of what makes it so compelling.
I think so. I mean, while we might not know the full extent of his influence,
Right.
we can certainly speculate. Imagine the impact of a figure like Zayd returning to his tribe with this newfound faith.
Right.
I mean, he was known for his wisdom, his generosity, his courage.
Yeah.
These are qualities that command respect, regardless of your beliefs,
It's like his conversion would have been like the talk of the town.
Oh, absolutely.
People would have been curious,
Right.
maybe even skeptical at first.
Yeah.
But knowing Zayd, he probably approached it
Yeah.
with the same sense of, conviction and respect that he displayed
Absolutely.
throughout his life.
And that's where I think his personal values really come into play again. Remember that story about him refusing to recline in the presence of the prophet?
Right.
That humility, that sincerity, that would have resonated with his people,
Yeah.
even if they didn't immediately, embrace Islam.
Right.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful form of persuasion is
Wow.
simply living by example.
It's like that saying, preach the gospel at all times. Use words if necessary.
Exactly.
Zayd might not have had much time to preach,
Right.
but his actions spoke volumes.
And that brings us back to your earlier question,
Yeah.
Can the impact of a life be measured solely by its length?
Right.
And I think Zayd's story is a resounding no.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the idea that a life lived with purpose, with integrity, can have these ripple effects that extend, far beyond our own lifespan.
It's almost like he planted a seed
Right.
that continued to grow even after he was gone.
Absolutely.
And who knows how many others were inspired by his example, by his willingness to embrace change while staying true to himself.
It's a powerful legacy, and it really, I think, speaks to the enduring impact
Yeah.
of individual stories
Yeah.
in shaping the course of history.
Right.
We often focus on the big events, the battles, the political upheavals,
Yeah.
but it's the personal journeys,
Right.
the choices made by individuals like Zayd
Right.
that give those events their human dimension.
And those individual stories are often the ones that stay with us
They are.
long after we've closed the history books.
Absolutely.
They remind us that even amidst, great societal change,
Yeah.
it's the personal values, the courage to stand by our convictions
Right.
that truly shape who we are and the legacy we leave behind.
Zayd al Khayl, the man of horses, who
Yeah.
became Zayd al Khayr the Good.
Yeah.
His story is a testament to the transformative power of faith,
Yeah.
the enduring strength of personal values, and the profound impact that even a short life can have.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about, dates and facts.
Right.
It's about the lives of real people
It is.
who navigated complex choices,
Yes.
faced their fears,
Right.
and ultimately left the world a little different than they found it.
Absolutely.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into Zayd's life, I think that's the message I hope stays with our listeners.
Yeah.
That no matter how long our journey,
Right.
it's the choices we make, the values we uphold,
Absolutely.
that truly define our story.